ya mamu nyina kwa babio e de ba Rockstar TVG so me dey no so fa kono ba kwabna osu afri e bo man ni de hye ofin ne abankro na wotimi nkanwumren so ya de ensema hodo ayensa aka no e de brom. Don't forget to subscribe. Once you betimi a subscribe no wa share now the comment na aba comment section no so na odi amaye ye besere se comment na eba ya sabi atemdidie no yenyi emfrim na yenso yentimi nkyere ya adwense ne esitie na yekọ enche na Ken Ofori-Atta na wono enkane a etwamu abandada no so na woye the then finance minister wotimi ekobo ne ho adwa ewo America mampani anas America kroni emu no ICE ene FBI for eso ne pechi ye nadwene se wo mo eso de ne beba because wa overstay ne welcome ewo United States of America ne nkrata wo de bae as a visit no watimi atimi atena amana broso na apart from that no wohwa ade se Ghana ha sei ye security hu nsensem no wo mo de krata ekokoma ICE ene FBI for se Ken Ofori-Atta enso de dream die bi anaka na city kwan so enso atimi abu oman Ghana krono ne no ena omo ehwe ne mu se omo sabe kan Ghana na omo de na afamra kwan so ne no na ekoba se ICE ene FBI so etis asem no wo mo enso eye mu hwehwemu a yewra Ken Ofori-Atta enso wo mo enso ede omo nsakan no na enkra ense kan anwumre e kire se yewra Ken Ofori-Atta okra 3 solid different passports wo de eye na djuma na eno na ama asem no enso akoyehu bringing Ken Ofori-Atta to Ghana no na form sa na ICE for enso kire se okra 3 different passports passport no yen said nhunu de wodi two kwan a man no ko overstay no welcome in United States of America na nsem na hodo no ya de se ho ensem na eso etimi ba yewra ya branch ba ko eso jebre na wode emu ntirimu no ba yenko ne yenko hwe ba de aka nyina no ye de beto
Atta's arrest in the United States, Washington, to be very precise. It hasn't only grabbed international headlines, it's dominated local airwaves and the newspaper front pages also. It's been 7 days since he was arrested by the U.S. Customs and Immigration Enforcement, ICE, and he's in custody. As of tonight, he's still there in custody. A former finance minister spending time behind bars in a detention facility. It is fascinating, it's unprecedented, and there are a few additional details we are learning tonight that I will share with you, and then we'll go to the United States and get the exclusive view from the U.S. Our Ghana ambassador to the U.S. is my guest tonight. We're also going to be speaking to 2 U.S. immigration officers. They understand what is happening to him, and I'll be telling you some very fascinating, giving some very fascinating insights into his chances of winning his custody a case before a U.S. immigration judge. It is fascinating indeed, and this is the place to stay. We've already seen the details on the U.S. Department of Homeland Security website that tells us that indeed he's still there. 7 days ago when he was arrested, we're told that he was in ICE custody. When we checked tonight before we came on air, he was still in ICE custody. Why? Because we know he has a date to appear before the courts on the 20th of January, and that hearing may or may not determine his fate. And what are his chances? We'll analyze that pretty shortly. So this building in the background, according to Manasseh Zuriawuni, is where he was arrested. And a bit about this building. It is a fascinating building. It is one of the buildings that only the rich and wealthy can afford to stay there. If you check the websites that have been sort of selling homes and units and apartments in this particular complex, 1 2-bedroom apartment there was costing an average of $2 million. And this is the same place that also used to host Kamala Harris before she became the vice president. And so that is a very plush neighborhood. You need to be very rich. And Ken Ofori-Atta clearly has the means. This is somebody who worked on Wall Street, so he knows his way about in Washington and Wall Street in New York is just 3 hours away by car. Very plush neighborhood indeed. And he was in this building when he was picked up by ICE agents there. And this building tells a story. One of the things I want to do for you is to give you a Google Earth imagination of what may have happened to him, because the ICE agents, from what Manasseh tells us, waited for him in the vicinity of this building. Immediately he got out, they picked him up. And I want to show you that on the screens here, because when you look at that is the building in question there, and from the overheads that we know. And you look at the streets in front of it, and this is the street in front of it in this neighborhood here. He would have been in this building and has spent some time there. They wanted to arrest him before, but they couldn't, and they waited to the next day, according to Attorney General, who had told us this. And he may have come out of this entrance onto the street somewhere, and he was quickly nabbed by the ICE agents. And so this is an area where normally you will not see that kind of arrest, because the people who stay there are wealthy people. They are people who are powerful, and they have wealth. And often, people with that kind of background, the ICE agents will be pretty careful before you make a mistake, because it could actually be somebody with significant amount of power, amount of resources. But this is a country where the law is no respecter of persons. And so, of course, he was picked up there. You can see the rooftop, very plush indeed. And this is an area that you can imagine kind of Ofori-Atta would have stayed, enjoyed the atmosphere there in Washington, D.C. Now, the contrast is pretty fascinating, considering that he was staying in this apartment, which is very luxurious, to what happened after he was picked up on the streets here, which you see here. See what happened. Once they arrested him on the street, they drove him 131 kilometers to the Caroline Detention Center. So from the plush, luxurious surroundings of the Westlight apartment complex to a detention center, where you were sleeping in a very tiny space. Your toilet was right there with you, and your bed, bunk bed, was right there with you. So the contrast was quite astonishing indeed for somebody like Ofori-Atta, who lives in wealth and luxury. His lifestyle there at the Westlight apartment complex told his own story, to this. That indeed tells a whole story. And this picture here tells 1,000 stories. From there, that building I showed you on the screen, to sleeping here. A short drive of some 1 hour, 30 minutes. His circumstances has changed dramatically on that day when he was picked up. Possibly sleeping in one of these bunk beds, possibly sharing that particular facility, this particular cell, this holding cell, with somebody else. Maybe sleeping on top of the bunk bed, and somebody may be there right underneath him. And if you notice very closely, this is his washing basin, and this is his toilet in that same cell. So you can see the contrast. This is a very difficult time for a finance minister who has led one of the longest serving finance ministers we had in this country, worked on Wall Street, to be sleeping in this facility, when an hour and 30 minutes before that, on the day he was arrested, he was in the plush, luxurious complex. This is one of the areas where the inmates will gather. Those being detained, the detainees will gather, and you can imagine Ofori-Atta strolling or along the upper deck of this particular facility, or coming to the zone here and talking to people, right? Or whether he's keeping to himself in the various rooms that you see in the upper deck of the Caroline Detention Center. Just the pictures tell its own story. Now, one of the things that we also found that was interesting, as far as the Caroline Detention Center is concerned, is that the average daily population is 335 people. So this is a facility, and from the evidence that we've seen, last year when Trump started his immigration crackdown, it became choked. It was filled to overflowing because they had arrested and detained more people than the facility could hold. And it was, at one point, it was overcrowded by more than 10 people, because it was designed for 335 people. They had more than that, 10 people extra. And that tells you a story. The average length of stay there was 47 days, and then you have here criminal detainees that can Ofori-Atta will be sharing this facility with. 29% of those who stay at the current detention center are criminals. Pause for a second and imagine that you have your former finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, now possibly spending time in the detention center, possibly with criminals, because 29% of them in this facility are criminals. Now, there's some interesting discrepancy, if you like, and contrast between the position of our current Attorney General and that of the lawyers for Ken Ofori-Atta. Because the lawyers of Ken Ofori-Atta have told us, and they issued a statement first, to say that, yeah, I mean, he had filed for adjustment of status, and that this is all very routine and this will be resolved very quickly. And then Attorney General came on Newsfile and said this, Dominic Ayine on Newsfile. This is what he told us when he came on the show, telling us about the specifics of why he was arrested and the situation with his visa that may have been revoked.
Are you responsible for Ofori-Atta's predicaments in the U.S.? He's been in ICE detention for how many days now? It must be a very terrible situation for him.
Well, okay, so you know that even from day one, I didn't make this public, but I started investigating Ofori-Atta, all right? In fact, in his case, I'm doing it with, some foreign investigators that are tracking, all the offshore dealings and so on, all right? And then, of course, we are also doing our own investigations here. They are inconclusive as we speak. I mean, we have not, come to any conclusion. So
this is different from the SML.
It's different, totally different, and potentially mind blowing. But I that I will not, give any details at this point in time. So I started working with the Americans in respect of Ofori-Atta long before OSP, came up with their announcement. Yeah, I started working with them, and I want Ghanaians to know that he just didn't overstay his visa. The visa was actually revoked. So it's not that Ofori-Atta, overstayed. So in July, the American government revoked, the State Department revoked his visa.
So that is Dominic Ayine, the Attorney General. Now, if you check the ICE website, it details the circumstances under which an individual can be detained. And one of the key things that jumps at us was change in the visa holder's eligibility, and which seemed to agree with the point expressed by the Attorney General that his visa was revoked. If indeed your visa has been revoked, then of course your circumstances has changed. Failure to comply with visa conditions, well, we don't know that for certain, that if that really applied to him. The public safety or national security concerns, we don't know that too. Fraud or misrepresentation. But here's the thing. The Attorney General says that he has been investigating him on some other issues. They're quite different from what the OSP has been investigating him on. So we don't know whether indeed the revocation must have been triggered by something. Attorney General seemed to suggest that the visa may have been revoked because of the separate investigations that he's pursuing. Not for certain, but at least there's a suggestion there that that's the case. But certainly, change in visa holders' eligibility, he may have indeed hold the valid visa, but if it's revoked, that then throws up the question. And the question that you need to also ask is, if indeed was revoked in July of 2025, why did the U.S. Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, wait until January of 2026 to effect an arrest? Raise the question. We don't have an answer to that, but the immigration lawyers in the U.S. who are joining us maybe can give us some clarity on this subject pretty shortly. And then also, one of the things that I want to do is also give you a bird's eye view of the detention facility that he's in, which is what you see there on your screen. So it is quite a vast area. If just take a tour there using Google Earth. That's the current detention center. That is where you have the entrance. That's the entrance where he would have been brought, and then he would have been ushered in. He would have been either in these quarters or any of these. It's a huge area holding almost 400 people. And at one point last year, it was full. but they were still sending people there. At one point, there were complaints that had been sent there about their management of detainees, including the fact that some of the detainees are allowed to work to earn money. Some of the detainees were allowed to work overtime more than the hours that legally they were supposed to work. So that's the enclave there. That's where he's been held. Colonel Ofori-Atta is being held, driven 1 hour 30 minutes from his luxurious apartment in Washington, all the way to this particular center there, where he's currently still in the custody of ICE. Now, to the point that I need to make also, we're beginning to understand a few things. There are two main, if you like, conditions that ICE itself has publicized, for which reason they will hold you. When ICE can detain an individual in question, is violation of the U.S. immigration laws, broadly is what I listed, right? And then individuals with final orders of removal. Colonel Ofori-Atta doesn't qualify here because that is subject to still some court hearings. But certainly on the violation of the U.S. immigration laws, he's definitely reason why he is now being detained in the USA. Now, so what is his path? There is a window though for Ken, and some have suggested that he actually may have been trying to take advantage of this window. Trump has introduced what he called the Trump Gold Card. If you have enough money, you can buy the U.S. citizenship. $15,000 to process, $1 million contribution, and then you have expedited permanent residency. So this is a path that Ken Ofori-Atta definitely can take. He is definitely worth far more than $1 million. This is a man who has worked on Wall Street. He has money. Former investment banker, Morgan Stanley. So he's definitely a man who is worth far more than that. He can come up with $1 million very easily, we believe. Co-founder of DataBank, Ghana finance minister. He has the wealth. He has the means to use this path. And whether or not his alleged violation of the U.S. immigration laws, if indeed his visa was revoked because of something he did, may excuse and may be a reason why this may not be something that the U.S. immigration may consider. It's a whole different conversation as far as this is concerned, but definitely he has the means to do this. And he has assembled quite the list of lawyers to defend him. The former U.S. Attorney General himself is his lead counsel. According to the Attorney General, our own Attorney General, he told us this last week when he appeared on Newsfile, that John Ashcroft, we know him. He was former governor of Missouri. He was a Republican political lobbyist. But most importantly, and this is where I found pretty interesting, he endorsed Trump in 2016. So if you're looking for somebody who may have the ear of Donald Trump, then you go for a former Attorney General, a Republican who endorsed him. And Trump, you know, is one of those people who has a significant ego. And this guy stroked it nicely in 2016. He may be speaking to Trump and in Trump's ear about Ghana's former finance minister. It is not coincidence that Ken Ofori-Atta has gone for John Ashcroft. But again, it tells you this former Attorney General will not come cheap. Very expensive indeed. But Ken obviously has the means. But he has also gone for another renowned lawyer. And this is no mean lawyer in the United States. He's a partner at White Law, Washington, D.C. We have reached him. He says he's not going to be speaking on the matter just now. Once we get him and circumstances change, we may bring him on the show and ask him a few questions. Anayat Qasimi, former Afghan aviation minister. So he himself is a minister, a former minister, just like Ken Ofori-Atta is, and former legal advisor to Afghan president. So he comes to the table also with significant gravitas and background. So note the common thread between him and Ashcroft. Both of them were senior government officials. They held ministerial positions. He, Ashcroft, was Attorney General of the United States. He, Anayat, was Aviation Minister of Afghanistan. So that tells you something. He's been very deliberate in the choice of his lawyers. Now, the hearing we know has been scheduled for the 20th of January. But the question we must ask ourselves is, what are the chances that this hearing may produce an outcome that sets him free? and gives him the permission to live in the US legally is very slim, I must say. Now, look at the data we found from the ICE website and ICE data that we've been poring over. Between January 28th, 2025 to January 8th, 2026, there have been a total of 352,590 arrests under Trump, right? Remember that he was sworn in January 20 in the US. Out of the total, they have deported 352,380. In other words, almost everybody they arrest, they deport. Almost everybody. It just leaves you, give or take, 200 plus people who manage to make a case to stay in the US after they've been arrested. And currently they have 68,990 people in detention, which includes Ofori-Atta. So pause for a second. This is the figure that struck me. 99.94% of all those arrested by ICE under Trump were deported. 99.94% of all individuals, regardless of status, once arrested, you are deported. So that tells you Ofori-Atta's chances of actually making a case to stay in the US after this arrest. And this is pure data, by the way. And you can see this on the